Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start by recognizing the collegiality of our chairman, Mr. Diaz-Balart, and the thoughtful members on both sides of the aisle. And of course, I want to thank our hardworking staff. But most of all, I want to recognize the brave and committed Americans, our diplomats, our USAID workers, our humanitarian teams, the public health experts, and our partners around the world, and the public health experts who bring our country's values to the world's toughest places. They're the ones who delivered vaccines to remote villages in the Congo, who helped girls in Ethiopia escape forced marriage and find education and safety. I've seen their work up close, I know many of us have, and the impact of programs we funded. Children who escaped the brutality of Assad's Syria thriving in classrooms in Jordan. Mothers in Malawi learning skills to support their families. Pregnant women in Kenya staying healthy with support from HIV clinics. To all these workers, past and present, you are the patriots. You represent the best of America. And those who are still serving deserve more than our thanks. They deserve the tools to get the job done. Mr. Chairman, I wish we had a bipartisan bill in front of us that I could support that honored the service and reflected Americans' leadership. If we had had a responsible allocation in a White House that understood diplomacy, development, and humanitarian aid, we could have gotten there. But instead, here we are questioning whether any of this really matters when the president just ignores the will of Congress and the laws we pass. So today, I strongly oppose the FY 2026 Republican bill. It's not just a funding cut. It's a reckless blueprint for American retreat. Our president seems to think that relying on threats and bullying alone is smart strategy. But chaotic tariffs, cruel immigration crackdowns, and this tepid foreign aid plan before us today is not going to make us more safe, secure, or more prosperous. And attention, we are ceding the world to China. And let me make it clear, this bill does not lower costs for hardworking families and retirees on day one, as promised by the president. Instead, it puts hard-earned finances at risk by hurting global stability. And tax breaks for billionaires is not a trade-off for millions of starving children around the world. And let me just say that this bill does not make one bit of difference in making up the $4 trillion addition to our debt when the Republicans passed what they call their big bill, their big, beautiful bill. I call it the big, ugly bill. And this bill adds to a list of troubling actions by the administration. Here's what's happened leading up. Foreign aid has been held up legally, then justified by an inane clawback known as a rescission. USAID, an agency backed by Congress that fights poverty and prevents conflict, gutted. Over 10,000 development and humanitarian professionals dismissed by Elon Musk. 5,000 life-saving programs abruptly terminated. 1,300 State Department staff laid off. Offices shuttered. Decades of progress wiped out. And how disgusting. The richest man in the world was allowed to pull the plug on programs that save the world's poorest children. The infrastructure and staffing are no longer present to carry out the few programs that remain. And let me say this again with emphasis. The infrastructure and staffing are no longer present to carry out the few programs that remain. And while the world faces crisis after crisis, wars and armed conflict, extreme weather, hunger and famine, disease and outbreaks, mass migration, rising authoritarian regimes. These aren't distant problems. They land right at our door. Fragile states collapse and migration surges. Trade stops and U.S. farmers and businesses lose buyers. Climate disasters destroy crops and homes. Broken health systems allow deadly viruses to spread. And when we step back, China and Russia step in, not to help, but to expand their grip. We're leaving behind a gap that they fill with money and weapons and propaganda, taking over the airwaves, reaching listeners who used to rely on Voice of America and our international broadcasting. They want to remake the world to fit their playbook. And meanwhile, sadly, our allies are also slashing foreign aid, pushed to spend more on weapons by Mr. Trump. As global needs explode, democracy's soft power is vanishing. And this bill fails to meet the moment. Here's what it really does. It cuts 22% from the international affairs budget. That's $13 billion. Diminishes funding for development and economic assistance. Kids kicked out of classrooms and cut off from clean water. Farmers losing seeds and tools to make a living. Violence prevention programs vanishing. Local nonprofits shut down. The bill slashes humanitarian aid by 42%. In Nigeria, malnourished infants are dying without food. In Miramar, hospitals are going dark. In Gambia, support for the survivors of female genital mutilation has ended as the country debates making it legal again. In Ukraine, wounded soldiers go without care. And in Ecuador, women entrepreneurs are losing lifelines and heading to our border. This is a blow to our credibility, our moral standing, and our global influence. Soft power, interestingly enough, development and diplomacy has been secret weapons abroad. Without them, we're losing Americans on the ground who know the terrain, see the trouble coming, and keep us one step ahead. And as always, here we go again. Republicans couldn't resist one more swipe at women, slashing family planning programs that save hundreds of thousands of lives each year and prevent millions of unplanned pregnancies. Reinstating the global gag rule, which blocks funding to foreign groups that even talk about abortion. You can't even say the word abortion. Not do abortion. Say the word abortion. You lose your funding. Gutting the UNFPA, which provides basic reproductive and maternal care in over 150 countries. And while this bill guts humanitarian programs and walks away from the world's most vulnerable, the administration is also on the road to destroying one of the smartest, most effective U.S. foreign policies, the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda. It's not some fringe idea. It's law, signed by guess who? Donald Trump. It passed with strong bipartisan support. Here's why. Women experience conflict differently than men, often bearing the brunt of sexual violence, displacement, and the burden of caring for families amid chaos. Yet, they are often excluded from life-changing decisions. The WPS agenda has trained diplomats, strengthened alliances, and put more women in the center of peace and security. When women are at the table for peace talks, recovery, and crisis response, the results are better, period. Peace lasts longer, communities recover faster, and missions succeed. And yet this administration has shut down the State Department's office that leads that work right when we need women's leadership the most. And this is not just short-sighted. It makes the world less safe and works directly against our own interests. This bill also bans multilateral institutions and organizations, UNICEF, the UN Development Bank Program, the African and Asian Development Banks, the World Bank, the World Health Organizations, undermining our ability to shape the global agenda and ceding the ground to autocrats. Guess who? Attention, China is going to take over this world. And so why should Americans care that these cuts are going to cost more than they save? Because the cuts hurt American families. When we walk away from the world, chaos spreads. Troops are put in harm's way. Our adversaries gain ground, and we pay the price in dollars and in lives. And look, I say this not just as a lawmaker, but as a mother. My son served in the Marines. He was sent to 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. I know what it means when diplomacy fails. The cost is not hypothetical. It hits our soldiers and the family the hardest. And let me remind you, the international budget was already less than 1% of our federal funding, but it delivered huge returns, markets for American goods, stability abroad, protection from pandemics, fewer troops sent into harm's way. Last week, we passed an $832 billion defense bill. That's hard power. But even our top generals warn without soft power alongside, that number will only keep rising. So, Mr. Chair, this bill's a lost opportunity. It's a failure to lead. It hurts American families because when health systems collapse, people get sick. When trade stalls, jobs vanish. When diplomacy fails, our loved ones go to war. So let me close with this. Democrats are not giving up. We're ready to work together with Republicans to reach a bill that reflects our values, keeps our promises, and protects American lives, because we cannot bomb and drone our way to peace and prosperity. A strong America does not hide. It does not bully. A strong America leads with vision, with courage and compassion, and that is the bill we should be fighting for. And thank you. I yield back. Thank you, Senator.